Although I've had a lot of fun getting into game development again, I've found that the games I've been making haven't been as fun to play as I'd like, because I didn't put enough effort into making them enjoyable. So for my next project, my goal is not to make it quickly, not to make it scary, and not to make it unique, but simply to make it good, fun, and something worth being proud of. So without further ado, let's start now. The first thing I did was define a game concept, but more than that, I made the concept as specific as I could. I decided that the game would be a 2D action platformer with a focus on combat. There would be 6 levels in total, which would each have a significant runtime. Each of the levels are physically stacked on top of each other, and throughout the game you descend lower. I even picked some themes for each of the levels, but I won't spoil them all yet. The player moves somewhat slowly and doesn't jump very high, but is quite capable with the sword, as he can attack forward, upward, and while crouching. He can also move while crouching, just at a slower speed. When attacking, he's able to move, but doesn't change the direction he's facing. Holding the same direction is also possible when not attacking. Jumping is also responsive, so he can jump high or jump low. Depending on how enemies attack, you might defend yourself by jumping over the attack, crouching under the attack, moving away from the attack, or countering the attack. By making these kinds of decisions in advance about what kind of game I want to make and how I want the game to play, it becomes easier to implement mechanics that are cohesive. In the past, I've had the tendency of figuring things out as I go because the initial concept wasn't specific enough. I haven't planned everything out, clearly, but I now know enough to have a good and confident start. As the project progresses, I will also take breaks from programming to actually sit down and increase the detail and quality of the concept I have now. So let's see how this concept panned out so far. I started by creating the player and copying over the collision code from my previous project. I then created separate systems for the 3 main types of controls: direction, movement, and attacks. Direction is more abstract than the other 2, but it basically represents which direction the player is looking in, and helps inform the 2 other systems. Attacks and movement both depend on which direction the player is facing, and since these systems rely on the same property, it makes sense to outsource that responsibility to a separate system, which is how I ended up with this situation. Because of the intuitive nature of this design, it was actually very easy to set up the player. I tested out the player a bunch and made slight tweaks to the gameplay. By the way, the reason the player graphics aren't done, and probably won't be for a while, is because I think I might make more tweaks over time, and I don't want to be restricted by the graphics. For example, if I want to change the height of the player, I can't change that easily without redrawing every sprite. I next did some work on the first level, the Maple Forest. I made some graphics and a basic level layout. There's obviously much more work to be done, but I wanted to have some kind of visual to help inspire how I design the rest of the level. This is the first level, so it would probably have simple challenges, with most of the emphasis being on showing the player how to play the game and what to expect in later levels. Obviously, none of this is final, but I imagine it could start with a sort of flat area where platforming is easier, that evolves into a more rocky landscape with dangerous cliffs. I think it would be neat to have some kind of impressive centerpiece. In other games, this might be something like a large tree you can enter inside, though I would definitely try to avoid including a large tree in particular because it's so overused. The level would end after the forest transitions into a cave, which is the setting of the next level. It might seem like some of these level themes are quite generic, like a forest and a cave, but my goal is to make the levels get much weirder as the game progresses, so hopefully that won't be a problem as you see more of the game. Overall, I think I've made good progress so far. This is a game I'm quite passionate about, so I'm confident I'll be able to finish it, or at least finish a significant portion. I'll definitely try to follow up with more updates in the future, and I hope you'll consider following along. Thank you. Bye.